ago, we found something insane living inside of our bait tank. At first glance, it looked like it was just another minnow, but when I scooped it out of the net, I realized it wasn't a minnow at all. It was a baby largemouth bass. And somehow while we were seine netting for minnows, we must have caught this little guy by accident, which has never happened to us before, and I had absolutely no idea or plan for him, so naturally, I fed him to Gus. And of course, I'm just joking, but by day 2, we decided to rush him to the closest tank that we had, and it was the tank with our 2 baby softshell turtles. At first, he looked great inside of this tank, but it didn't take long to realize that this was a horrible idea. Those 2 turtles were extremely aggressive, and any chance they had, they tried to eat Gus Jr. Thankfully, while he was in that tank for 2 days, the turtles weren't able to get a bite of him, and we were able to move him homes. The next one we added him to already had a baby bluegill and albino frog, but that didn't last long, because we ended up finding this 25-gallon aquarium on Facebook Marketplace for a great deal, but at this point he was terrified, he looked underweight, stressed, and I really didn't know if he was going to survive. So we did the only thing that I could think of, and well, we went to the creek and we decided we were going to try to catch him some food. We ended up hitting a spot where I've caught very tiny minnows in the past. We scooped around for a couple of minutes, and sure enough, we got a dozen of these tiny mosquito fish. And this was going to be the moment of truth on whether Gus Jr. would survive or not. And we put in the first minnow, and he nailed it. One after another, Gus Jr. was eating every single minnow that touched the water. And by day 14, Gus Jr. looked completely different, more alive, way healthier. But there seemed to be just one problem. Gus Jr. was lonely. So on day 18, we took to the sewers and searched for a tank mate for Gus Jr. And we found this. Not the leeches, but the crawfish on top of the leeches. He was missing one claw and was just slightly bigger than Gus Jr. and was honestly perfect. We added him in and watched very closely, and shockingly, they got along great. Around this exact same time, much like Gus Jr., we found this baby crawfish along all of the bait, and against my better judgment, we added him to the tank as well. And over the next few weeks, we monitored them, and well, what was really crazy is all 3 of them absolutely loved living together, as long as we kept them fed. And this is the point where we realized that Gus Jr. would literally eat anything in his tank, and he wouldn't stop eating until he absolutely looked like a balloon. And by day 45, he had one of the biggest bellies I had ever seen, and even crazier, he ate out of my hand for the very first time. And that's how I knew he was finally starting to trust me. But we had another issue. We were feeding him the exact same foods over and over, bloodworms and small minnows. So we decided to switch it up and grab some brine shrimp from the bait shop. And I have never fed any of my fish brine shrimp in the past, but we threw it into Gus Jr.'s tank, and there was no hesitation. It was an instant favorite. By day 60, with all the eating, came some consequences. The tank was disgusting, and the filters were the dirtiest I had ever seen, so we instantly did a quick water change and clean of the entire tank. And while we were cleaning the filter, just take a look at the water that we were cleaning it in. Thankfully, other than the dirty water, there were no more issues, and once again, Gus Jr. was living in some fresh, clean water. And something about that water made him even more aggressive. That's when we introduced earthworms. And at first glance, I think Gus Jr. was terrified of these things, but it didn't take long for him to absolutely crush one. And I think quickly he had a new favorite food once again. Unfortunately, day 75 came along, and that's when things went wrong with his first friend, the crawfish. The crawfish started growing much faster than Gus Jr., and every chance he got, he tried to clamp onto him. So we ended up removing him from the tank, and I was shocked to find out that he had turned a bluish tint, much like all of our other crawfish in the past. But we didn't release him into the creek, Instead, we decided to give him his own permanent home where he could live inside of our minnow machine. Here, she would help us keep it clean, have unlimited food and cover, and would feel safe for the rest of her days. On day 90, I decided that we were going to try to replace this crawfish with another friend. So we ended up taking to the sewers once again, and well, we found this baby green sunfish, the exact same size as Gus Jr. And I thought this was going to be a match made in heaven, but Gus Jr. took one look at this and looked at me and said no. I had never seen him act like this before, but I listened, and just as quick as the sunfish came, it was gone. By this point, Gus Jr. was growing so fast that he was almost the size of my pointer finger and had almost nearly grown 2 inches long. And it wasn't just his length and size that was growing, his aggression had nearly doubled. By day 120, anything that touched the water, he would instantly attack. And on this day, we were back at the sewer and we found this baby little turtle, and I thought they could be great friends. But that's when I added them to the tank, and Gus Jr. tried to eat them. And I had never seen a baby bass with that much confidence. We ended up removing the turtle, and that's when I realized we had to up his diet. We started feeding him things like tilapia, shrimp, salmon. Gus Jr. was literally living better than most people. And this diet change 100% worked, because by day 150, we were throwing in handfuls of minnows, and that's when I realized how fast this fish really was. Just take a look. And well, it was time for another measurement, and he was up to 3.5, almost 4 inches as well. By day 180, we started a brand new series, and it was whatever we catch, Gus eats. And that's when we found his very first weakness, grasshoppers. He wanted nothing to do with them, and we soon realized anything with legs, he was afraid of. I honestly don't blame him, but that's when we gave one more legged creature a chance, and it was this little frog. And I assumed, just like all the other leg creatures, he was going to be afraid, but Gus Jr. was not afraid in the slightest. He absolutely annihilated this little frog. And that was by far one of the biggest things he has eaten in his young life, and it left him with a fat belly. By day 210, we realized we could move him from these very small minnows that we had been feeding him to almost nearly full-size minnows, and not even just that, even worms 2 times his size. When he ate this worm, I was super nervous that he was gonna choke, but he ended up eating the entire thing. But by day 240, disaster struck. We found Gus Jr. covered in ick, a parasite that can kill a fish fast. He was motionless and wouldn't eat a single thing. We immediately did a huge 75% water change and added aquarium salt and just prayed. And 24 hours later, we found Gus Jr. doing 1,000,000 times better. And just a few days later, our pet crawfish ended up having hundreds of babies. And while we didn't know what to do with all of them, but for some of them, it's a ultimate food source for Gus Jr. as well. And all of this constant eating took us to day 320, where Gus Jr. has officially outgrown his 25-gallon aquarium. So we took out some of the money that Gus Jr. helped us earn online, and we're upgrading him to a 75-gallon aquarium. And this process to find the exact tank and everything I exactly wanted took so long, and it ended up bringing us to day 350, where we finally had the entire 75-gallon tank ready to go. We tested it with a minnow, and then we knew it was safe for Gus Jr. And on day 365, we had to do one last measurement where he came in at 5 inches long. And after spending a year inside of a 25-gallon aquarium, he just made the biggest upgrade ever, and he looks amazing. And now is time for the real growth. So far, that has been the journey of Gus Jr. Until next year.